right. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's almost the end of build. We just realized that we're actually the last session, so we were wondering if you're here for the session or just waiting for the 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗀𝗻 one, but that will be fun. Yeah. So maybe before we start, let's quickly introduce ourselves. So I'm Niels Laute. I'm a product manager in the Windows Developer Platform team. So I work on projects like 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗏, the AI Dev or the AI Toolkit, and the AI Dev Gallery that you saw this week. So we do a bunch of XAML and design stuff there. I basically pretend to be the engineer, and that's why I brought Sergio today.
Hey folks, I'm Sergio Pedri. I'm an engineer on the store client team, and yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today about how to build great Windows apps.
Right, so this is actually going to be a session where we're just going to jump in, a lot of code and a lot of demos. And the idea was to basically walk you through some common scenarios that we see that developers sometimes run into, and to see how Sergio is going to fix all of that for us.
I'm going to try, certainly.
Right. So how we're going to do that is we're going to look at our, so when we were not working for Microsoft, we actually work for Compositor Smart Home. So
that's our main gig.
Right, that's our Sunday afternoon thing. And we're going to walk through these two apps. So one is built with WPF, and another one is built with WinUI. And actually, Sergio, let me pull up the WinUI one. So right, because I was looking at it, and I'm not sure who was writing the code, but if I click on the sync button here...
It doesn't work, I would say it was you.
Right. Like, it doesn't update, and if I stop it, it still keeps updating, and the bottom was, is still disabled.
Right. I don't think it actually stopped doing any work. Like it
right. It just continues. Yeah. So I'm not sure who wrote the code. Looks like I did.
Yeah. I'm very grateful for Git blame.
Yeah. We should have hidden that. OK. Well, maybe you can actually help us out here.
Yeah, let's swap. All right. Let's see what we have. So we want to fix that button, probably like also implement cancellation. And I guess, just looking at this, I see we have a whole bunch of code just in code behind. So maybe that was your doing.
I'm sorry.
Maybe let's just take the opportunity to also refactor it a little bit. Yep. Let's use the MVVM toolkit, and let's maybe refactor this using the MVVM toolkit, the MVVM architecture to make it more modular and easier to test. So we have let's just see what we're starting with. We have an observable collection with some scenes. Those will be all the images that we loaded. And then we have a button handler where we're just manually toggling the button to be disabled. We're showing the progress control. We're incrementing the progress value. And then here we have like some loop. Here I assume we're just simulating some work.
Right. That could be that we are grabbing images from a server or something.
Yeah. Or reading from
async operation.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So I've actually gone ahead and created a view model that we can start with. So far, we only have a simple class that derives from observable object, which is the base class from the MVVM toolkit that provides all the basic 𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗏change functionality. And we have two observable properties. These probably look like the classic observable properties that everyone's familiar with. But to start with, I would say maybe we can refactor these to be more compact, because that's just a lot of boilerplate code that nobody wants to deal with. Right. So we can do this in two steps, actually. The first thing I want to do is to right-click on one of these. I'm going to go to Quick Actions and Refactorings, and I'm going to click on Use Auto Property. So this is a built-in refactoring provided by Roslyn if you're using C# Preview, and it'll also be in C# 14. And I'm just going to click on Fix All in Document. And I'm going to hit Apply. And this is already looking much better, right? We no longer have the explicit backing fields. We just have two auto properties using the fill keyword.
Right.
Right? So that's better. But we can go even further. Actually, from here, we can see that the MVVM toolkit analyzer now is telling us that we can do something. So you see those three little dots. And if we hover over them, we can see that the toolkit is telling us, hey, actually, you can convert this to be partial properties using the new generators that are bundled with the toolkit. Right. And so I don't even need to do anything myself. I can just click on the IntelliSense light bulb and apply this code fix. We can see the preview. I'm going to hit Fix All in Document. You can fix all of them in the entire solution if you want to. Just going to click Apply, and here you go. So now the entire both of these properties are just one line each plus the attribute. Ignore the red squiggly line to just VS takes a second or two to actually refresh after generating code. But yeah, that's all you need. And you can imagine this would scale as you have like hundreds or more properties, right?
You can clean some up.
Yep.
That code, yeah.
And if we actually want to see the generated code, you can easily do that by just control-clicking to jump into the generated code. which, of course, now that we're demoing, it will not do that, whereas every time that we did this before, it did. So let's see if I can actually do that manually from here. I'm going to go find the generator.
Do you want me to follow a bug or something? Or
Maybe, probably in browser. We can assign it to Fred or someone.
Okay.
I'm going to find the observable property generator. Yeah, this is just, oh, there it is. And it's not generating. This is probably just VS, just glitching for a second. But once we
can
build
restart it.
Yeah,
that works.
That'll be fine. Anyway, let's carry on. So the next thing, yeah, let me just restart VS, actually.
There we go.
Yeah, this sometimes happens, primarily when you're live demoing.
But now the question is, if this is not going to work, then what, right?
Don't go there yet. All right. The next thing we want to do is we want to refactor this button click handler, right? So I'm just going to copy all of this, go into my view model, and I'm going to define, oh yeah, see now it's all working fine.
There we go.
Yeah, and now I can actually control click. Thank you. And now you can actually see all the generated code, right? So this is the same code that you would have written manually, with the backing fields and all the property change notifications. And we also have a bunch of partial methods that you can optionally implement to inject some kind of callback logic if you want to run some code when some property changes. Right, so I'm going to implement a method for my command. I'm going to say private async task load images async. And I'm just going to paste this code here. And I want to make a command out of this button. So, sorry, out of this method, so I'm just going to use another attribute, which is relay command. This will trigger another source generator, which will this time generate a property with a relay command implementation that will wrap this method. So next thing I need to do some tweaks. So for instance, all of this work that we were doing manually before to disable the button and enable the show progress control, right? We don't need that anymore.
Right, so all that UI code we can just remove.
Yeah, we can remove that. We also want to move that observable collection of items, right? We don't want that into our code behind anymore. So I'm just going to delete that and move it all the way over here. I'm just going to make it public. And this can be read-only now. Just going to set it to an empty collection. So we can remove that. I can set the progress value to 0 and the label. The rest, this one is the same. And I can also remove this. And this is an example of the kind of thing that you can simplify by using commands, whereas before you would have had to manually disable commands, enable them. If you use a command instead, the XAML framework will automatically monitor when the command is enabled or not. And in this case, the relay command will automatically disable itself when there's an operation, in this case, asynchronously, that is running. So then we can go back to the code behind. I'm going to quickly instantiate the view model. I'm going to say data context equals new device page view model. Need to pull in a using directive. You can imagine in a more in a bigger application, you might be doing something fancier here, like you might be instantiating the view model from a DI service provider. But here, just to keep things simpler, I'm just going to new it up. And then I want to just manually invoke the command to load the images. I'm actually going to create a property first.
That's probably something you could do in XAML as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, with a XAML behavior or something, which is nicer. Yeah. I'm going to say view model. Yep, just that. And then from here, I'm going to say view model dot load images command. So you can see the command showing up in IntelliSense. And I'm going to just execute it. Now I can completely remove this button click handler. I don't need that anymore. And the button click itself. Remove all of that. And then if we go to XAML, I can now update this item source, which now has to bind to the sync collection, the view model, right? And then the button, which was this one,
right? I
can remove this click handler and just bind to the command instead. So I can say command, and I'm going to use xbind view model dot load images command. And also I need to update the progress value and the label for the progress control, right? So I'm going to just
so that the number gets updated and it actually,
Just going to say label equals xbind. Was it progress label or was it just label?
It was a label, I believe.
Yeah. And I'm going to set the mode to one way.
I did the slides, you did the demo, so you should know. That's
and progress value equals view model dot progress value, and this also one way. Right. And then for the visibility, this is actually cool because we no longer need to manually set it to like be visible or not visible, right? Because if we actually look at the generated command, we can actually see that if we go once again to analyzers, we find the MVVM toolkit source generators, and we go look at the relay command generator, and we expand that file, we can see that it automatically saw, oh, this method is asynchronous, so I can use an asynchronous relay command, right? And if we control-click on that interface, we can see that it's also itself observable, and it has a bunch of very convenient properties that we can use. So for instance, in this case, we're interested in these ones, right? There's a isRunning property.
So we could actually bind that to the UI.
Yes.
And we don't need,
and we can also leverage the fact that XAML can implicitly convert bool properties to visibility values, right? So we don't even need a converter here.
Right.
So let's go back to XAML.
So you get all that for free, right?
Yep.
The generator. Yeah.
So I'm just going to say xbind equals viewModel.loadImagesCommand dot, and I'm going to use isRunning here, right? Mode equals one way. All right. Let's try running this just to see where we're at. And hopefully I didn't forget anything. I think we have the view model, we have the command. And then the next thing we probably want to do after this is adding actually the cancellation support, right? Which was the thing that wasn't working before.
Yes, correct. So when you press the button, it just kept on going.
Right. All right, let's see. So it's still working as before, bugs and all, but at least the code now is already much more modular, right?
Yeah.
So the button is working, the images show up, everything is working, and this time the code is already starting to look much easier to maintain, right? So the next thing then we said, we want to make this cancelable. So if we go to the view model, normally this is something that would require a whole bunch of work, right? You need to set up a cancellation token and then manage a source, and then you need to manually create another command that monitors the token and then cancel it, and it's a whole bunch of work that nobody wants to do work. I mean, I don't. So what I can do instead is to just define a cancellation token parameter, and then we just use it like you would. So I can pass it to, for instance, this task delay property, token. Here I can just say token.throw if cancellation requested, and I can also pass it here. And next, I want to set two properties. So the first one is, you can imagine if the operation is canceled, here we might throw a cancellation exception, right? Like an operation cancel exception. Or there might be some other exception, but I don't want to crash the app if that happens, right?
Never.
So for that, there's a property that we can set in the relay command attribute, which is flow exceptions to task scheduler. And I'm going to set that to true. What this does is, if there's an exception here, rather than blocking on it on the UI thread and crashing the app, I'm just going to flow the exception to the task scheduler unobserved exception event, so I can log it from there if I want to. But most importantly, the app will not crash. You can do the same if you also just like manually use a try-catch for your entire code.
Right.
But this is just simpler. Right. So that's the first thing that I want to do. And the second thing is I'm going to set another property here, which is include cancel command, and I'm going to set that to true. And by just setting this property, the toolkit will automatically generate another property with a specialized command just to handle cancellation that is bound to this one. And whenever you click that, it will cancel this token. And will also automatically enable or disable itself depending on whether the cancellation has been requested or not.
Right.
Which just saves a whole lot of work, right? So we have this, which is looking good. And then we need to actually pass the cancel command to the progress value, which I don't think has a dependency property yet for that, right?
No, right. But I mean, there are a couple of dependency properties, and I think everyone just like copy and paste those, right? You don't need to.
Yeah, because we need to create a new one. Yeah. Yeah, so this is something that, I mean, I don't know about you, but I hate this. Like, every time I need to write a dependency, I'm like, is there something else I could do? Because I don't feel like doing this. It's like, it's a lot of code. It's easy to get wrong or sadly wrong. You end up just copy-pasting it everywhere. It's just like a lot of code. I don't want this.
I mean, that's how it goes. You copy and paste it, and you try it, and it doesn't work because you have some sort of, type is not correct.
Surely we can, that's true, but surely we can do better. And in fact, so for this, we actually introduced a new dependency property generator, which is now in the Community Toolkit Labs. And in fact, we can actually see that it's already starting to throw some suggestions at us, right? So you can see these three little gray dots, right? So if I hover over them, you can see that it's saying, hey, actually, this manual property can be converted to a partial property using the new generated dependency property attribute, right? So I'm just going to click on the IntelliSense light bulb, and I'm going to hit Use Partial Property. I'm going to apply all in document. And that's
beautiful.
it. So now every single dependency property is a single partial property with an attribute. And once again, we support things such as callbacks. The generator has a whole bunch of additional optimizations, such as if you implement a callback method, it will generate some metadata in the registration for the delegate. Otherwise, it will skip that. So it does a whole bunch of work for you behind the scenes.
And what about like the property change events and all that? Like,
yeah, you can do that. So if you click on the generated code, which once again, VS just doesn't, maybe it's just too early in the morning for VS as well. Let me expand that. Source generators. This one, yeah. No, it's not, it hasn't updated yet. Okay,
we can restart again.
Yeah, we can restart again. Or, yeah, let me just do that real quick.
That at least works, I hope. Let's see.
I mean, it did last time, so I'm cautiously optimistic. All right. Yeah, okay, at least IntelliSense is not complaining anymore.
Right.
But yeah, you can set the default value, you can set dependency. So yeah, like what you said, if you want a property change callback, right? There will be a generated partial void on, in this case, it would be progress value changed callback, property changed method, and then you just implement that, and then the generator will automatically wire that up, right? Nice. So let's see actually if I can, I can control click on it now.
There we go.
You can see these are the generated properties, and these are all the generated method at the bottom. And in this case, this is probably the one that you were thinking of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can just implement on progress value property changed, and then the generator will automatically wire that up.
Nice.
All right, so let's do the cancel command that we wanted, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to say public partial I command. I can even make them nullable because we added a whole bunch of analyzers to even support nullability values for dependency properties.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say cancel command get set, and I'm going to need to add a using directive for it. And I'm going to add generated dependency property. That's it, just 2 lines of code, and we have our new dependency property. At this point,
oh, did you just turn it off? Oh,
oops,
there we go.
I misclicked.
Let's see.
I can.
Yeah, we're back.
And I can delete this, and I can go into the XAML for this, and find the button, which is this one, right?
Yep.
So I can delete this click handler.
And hook up the command.
Yeah. So I can say command, and I'm going to bind to cancel command. Right. And then we're done there. So we can just go back to our page. And here I can remove this button click handler. And now I can just set the cancel command property. IntelliSense probably just needs a second to update.
Right.
But I can just bind to viewModel dot, we can see load images cancel command, right? It's the new command that just popped up. And that's everything we needed. So I can now, I don't think I forgot anything. So let's give it a second to build. And
so we added a whole bunch of functionality with less code. That's,
just like 4 lines in total. So let's double check. So this is working as before. Let's try if I want to cancel halfway through. So I'm going to click stop. And there you go. The button now works as expected.
Well, there we go.
Very nice. Thank you.
Like the applause that you get when you just make a button work. That's
I don't deserve it.
That's good. That's good. Cool. So what else?
What else should we cover?
There was something about like boot startup performance and stuff, right? That you want to look at.
Yes. For that, maybe we can try enabling native AOT for the app.
Sure.
Right. So for those of you not familiar with it, native AOT is a relatively new, fully runtime for .NET that is optimized for AOT scenarios. And the main benefits are that it gives you, in particular, very fast startup performance and smaller working set. And also, it makes your entire application a single, fully native, self-contained executable. And so, because we're working on a GUI app, we just want users to get that nice, snappy feeling when you click on it, and it just shows up immediately.
Right.
So let's see how we can make that happen here. I think we did some work to support it already, but we didn't actually went all the way through. Right. So let's do that now. So I'm going to go into the CS project for my app, and I'm going to set a few properties to enable AOT. So the first one that I want to set is publish AOT, right? So I'm going to do publish AOT equals true. And what this property is going to do is it's going to tell the .NET SDK that when I publish the app, it should make it go through the entire native AOT compilation toolchain so that it spits out the native executable that we want. And next, I also need to set another property, which is allow unsafe blocks. And the reason why we need this is that This is required to generate some additional code to support WinRT marshalling for some of the scenarios that XAML uses. In our case, we have a bunch of generic collections, like for the images, and that's one case where we need this property. But don't worry, if you forget this, we have another analyzer that will basically yell at you and say, hey, you actually need to add this to the CS proj. All right, so this is basically what we need to get started. We can just F5. And the cool thing about this is that when we actually just F5, we don't go through the AOT compilation toolchain because that would take too much time, right? We keep the usual fast dev inner loop, but we use the AOT emulation mode. So like the app will still run on core CLR, so you get all the cool things such as hot reload and the fast dev inner loop, but the code will behave as if it actually were on AOT. So you get like the benefits of both worlds. And then when you're ready to actually publish, then you can create your AOT build. So let's see. So the app is working, but yeah, something's not right here.
Is it though? Yeah,
I think there's some images that are supposed to be here. So this is an example of the kind of thing that can sometimes break. There might be more or less work required to actually make your app work on AOT, depending on what code you're studying from. In this case, since it's a template, I would imagine probably we're using some old binding somewhere.
So we probably want to update. Yeah. So xbind.
Let's go to device page. Oh yeah, we have an old binding for title and one for the patch. So yeah, these are some like legacy bindings that are reflection-based, and they're not good for performance, nor they give you like compile time type checks. So I wouldn't recommend using them in the first place. But in particular for AOT, they're not really great. They require some additional code to make them work. And in this case, they just didn't, because we didn't do that additional code. So rather than do that, though, we just can switch them to xbind, which gets us working and also with additional safety.
Right, so we're going to add a data type, I guess, right?
Yes, we need to do that first. So data type, I think it was a scene, right? Yep. And then I'm going to just toggle this to xbind, and I'm going to toggle this to xbind too. Right, let's try again. We also have a whole set of analyzers that will also help you spot all common issues in AOT scenarios in case your app is not trim or AOT safe.
Right.
Okay, this is looking much better, right? So the app is working as before, and we have the templates also showing up correctly. The last thing I want to show, though, is to actually compile this with native AOT, right? So we can actually show that it is running effectively as a single binary. So let's do that. So for that, I'm just going to set a property in the CS proj, which will force the app to actually generate an MSAX package for publishing, which will then enable the AOT toolchain, right? So I'm going to say generate Apex package on build. I'm going to say true. I'm also going to switch to release. And I'm going to F5. And if you look at the output here, the thing that tells you that this is actually going through the native compiler is that after it builds the app DLL, you will see this generating native code, right? That's ILC, which is the native compiler that is kicking in and producing the final binary. And so in a second, assuming everything goes according to plan.
Like we already had to restart twice today.
Yeah,
so
that's one more.
probably not the last time.
Don't jinx it, though. Why would you do that? All right, so here's the app working as expected. And we can actually double check that it is, in fact, an AOT build by opening Task Manager. If I search for Contoso Studio, actually, let me search for it so it doesn't move around. And I can right-click and do Open File Location. And you can see that we have a single exe, which is 7.9 megabytes, and there's no other managed DLLs in the entire folder. So this is the entire app with the entire .NET runtime also bundled inside.
Nice.
Cool.
So I guess we can recap what we just saw.
Yep. So we covered the MVVM toolkit generators and how they can help you simplify MVVM scenarios and how they can help remove a whole bunch of boilerplate code. Next, we covered the I was counting on you, man.
I'm going to do it.
Thank you. So next, we covered the dependency property generators and that are available in the Toolkit Labs preview feed. They're available for both EWP and WinUI 3. And we showed how they can greatly simplify writing dependency properties. And lastly, we also covered how you can enable native AOT to make your app run on native code to get a much faster startup speed.
Nice. All right. Now, let me just show you the other app, because we did something cool there. So I'm just gonna.
Did?
No, I did. Let me see. I'm just gonna set this to our starter project.
That's the WPF app, right?
Right. So this is the WPF app. It's pretty similar in terms of functionality, but when I click on this tile here, I get this nice pop-up, and it actually uses one of the... Oh, wait. We didn't...
Don't worry, I got it.
Oh, yeah. Now we're good?
You're
okay.
Good.
I'm sorry. So you can see that it actually looks at all of the data that this app collected, and then it uses the Windows AI APIs for image description to basically come up with a summary of what just happened. So that's why we were actually using Windows App SDK in this app. And as a result, obviously, because we were pulling in the entire Windows App SDK, we ended up with a pretty big project, right? A WF project. Luckily, last Monday, great timing.
Right.
We actually introduced with the latest experimental release of Windows App SDK that we're now supporting meta packaging. So instead of pulling in the entire Windows App SDK, I can just select a specific subset.
That's right.
So in this case, I actually selected just the AI package. And as a result, you can see that pulling in the entire Windows App SDK for this project, it was around 260 megabytes, but we brought that down to 200 megabytes. So hopefully with this, it makes it much easier to only basically select what you need. Because if you're a WPF app, you probably don't need like an entire WinUI or some other code there. Another thing related to Windows App SDK that we're introducing is that our experimental release cadence is improving. So we're moving to a monthly release cadence because we've got feedback from you guys that we want to get the early bits, and we love feedback. So this is perfect, and that makes it easier to get feedback and to let you play around with some of the new stuff that we're doing.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, maybe we can switch gears a little bit and talk about design.
Yeah, I recognize some of those apps.
Right.
So,
yeah. So these are some of the examples that our community has been building over the last couple of years. I think we all agree if you look at some of these, like they look stunning. And some of the feedback that we often get, obviously, from developers is like, I'm not a designer. How do I know, how to create like a beautiful, beautiful user interface? And sure, it's we're not all gifted, I guess, with some of the design skills that people have. But there are actually a bunch of rules of thumb that you can apply to your app to make it look great without that much work. So one of the first things that is really important is obviously the layouting and some of the spacing values that you use. And consistent spacing really helps you to group the right information in your UI and to create some sort of visual order. Another one is typography, and this is not about adding Comic Sans to your app. This is about using the right font weights and font sizes that will really help you to create some hierarchy, and that really guides the user through your UI to see what is the most important information to look at. Another one is around color and material. You can obviously highlight certain aspects of your UI to draw attention to, or light up specific controls. And then lastly, I know you're very passionate about this.
I love animations.
Are animations. And again, it adds a little bit of polish to your app, but it also has a great functionality where users actually see what's happening on the screen versus just flashing things around. Mm-hmm. So maybe we can actually go back to our WPF app here. Mm-hmm. Because you saw when I opened up this dialog, it's a bit all over the place. Like there's some random controls here. The margins and paddings are a bit off, and there's not really like a great hierarchy in terms of where the content is.
Who did this?
I did the slides, you did the code. That's
I didn't do that.
Sure, Sergio. Nah, I did it. But let me show you actually how we can. Oh, what's going on? Go away. We're not going to use the designer here.
Just
slide that one away. Cool. So what you see here, some of these buttons had a bunch of margins, and we see that quite often that people play around and just come up with random values. But in terms of spacing, what is really important is the Fluent Design System uses a coherent spacing unit of 4. So if you just stick to that unit of 4 and basically use those values for all of your sizes and white space and paddings and margin and whatnot, that actually helps you to be very consistent in the way that you can lay out your UI. The WinUI gallery actually has a great design section where a lot of that stuff is explained. So, right, so for example, like some of the margins that we just saw, if you look at this, you see that I think these were cards from the store app. you can see that there are a bunch of values that we're using that are all using that 4-pixel unit. So maybe we can start with that, and we're going to apply some of that to our app here. So I'm just going to remove some of these hard-coded margins.
Those almost look like intentionally put there to be wrong.
Did you, Sergio, or oh?
I don't remember.
Yeah, maybe you did. Let's see. So I'm just going to add some margins here. So I'm going to stick to 16. So that is one of the margins that we recommend for basically your inner border for some of these dialogues. I'm going to add that here as a padding to this border too, if I type correctly. There you go. And then I want to make sure that my buttons, since this is a dialog and some of these commands, I want those to have at the bottom so that the eye flows from the top of the dialog where I can look at some of the important content to the bottom where all the action stuff is happening. So I'm just going to make these stretch, and this one too. And then I'm going to run it, and we can see what's going to happen.
Somebody said let's start up. Yep.
Right. So I'm going to open it up again. As you can see, this margin already helped a bit. Oh, I see we still have some work to do there. Yeah. But at least it already helped that the buttons are not at the bottom, so the commanding is happening there. But I'm not really happy about some of the text here, and I guess we need to fix that margin.
It's getting there, though.
Right, so I'm just gonna stop this one. Let me just add a spacing. I think we use 8. I think that's what the WinUI gallery was showing, which is probably a good one. So this is the spacing between the buttons. And then we can pull in some of the, because we were talking about text earlier, right, some of the default style ramps that we have in Fluent Design. So you can obviously, come up with your own, font weights or font sizes, but actually Fluent Design has a very nice type ramp that we use all across Windows. So if you stick to some of these, you're really consistent in how your app fits in with the rest of the OS. So I'm just going to pick this subtitles block style here. And although this is the WinUI gallery, all of these styles also work in WPF, right? That's because great. Last year we announced the Fluent theming for WPF. So that overlap is, is pretty nice that you can actually move some of that XAML around. Right. Now the other thing that I want to do, let me just run it first, is that was the color bit. So if you look at the dialog here, like stuff is a bit floating around, right? You have this image at the top, and then you have basically the content that belongs together, the commanding and the actual description of it. Is a bit floating around, right? And it's floating around on this mica background. That looks nice, but maybe we can actually add like some color to the background of it, create a card to make sure that it, is grouped together better.
I'm sure you have ideas on how to do that.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna, come up with some new colors because again, that's where we have
all those resources and.
Right, that's where we have Fluent for. And this is really important because we often see that developers basically say, and I do that myself, if you just want to debug something, I will just turn, that background, I will just make it light gray because that will work great on white and or in light or a dark theme. The problem with that though is that you will run into accessibility issues. Right. So some of the text might not render correctly. So that's why we recommend just sticking with some of the brushes that we have as part of WinUI.
Does this mean that if a user has one of those custom accessibility themes, things will still look right and readable?
Exactly. So that helps them, and it will make your life easier too. So I'm just going to add some add stroke here too for the actual border brush, dynamic resource, and let's run it again. Nice. And now you can see that we actually group some of that content together in that card, and that the actual picture is basically floating on top of it. Now, the other thing that we talked about was motion, right? And I want to show you some things that we can do here. I'm just going to set this as a starter project again.
Let's add some animations. That's the best part.
Exactly, and we're going to start with the settings screen because that's the most important screen of the app, I guess.
Of course.
This is about adding polish to your app, right? So we shouldn't forget about the. Should we actually remove the stuff?
Oh, no, I think I already removed it.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah, perfect.
Don't worry.
Then I guess we'll just wait a bit.
Yeah, just taking its time. It's early morning for VS2 as we saw earlier. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there it comes up. So this was actually something that during the dry run yesterday crashed, so we're going to see if it's going to happen again. So what you see is if I open up this expander, we have these nice settings cards here. Those are part of the Windows Community Toolkit. But when I click on some of these, you see that the expander has this built-in animation that nicely animates out the card. So that gives a nice effect. The problem, though, is the content underneath it basically jumps, right? Because the about section. Exactly, right. It just goes down, and then the expander smoothly animates. So it looks a bit jarring. Luckily, there's a very, very simple way to fix that. And that is using some of the transitions that we have built in. So what I'm going to do, just so we can look at the before-after, I'm going to copy over this stuff and create a new. Oh, what just happened? Oh. Yeah, and then I'm gonna.
That's a lot of code changes for a live demo. You're very brave.
You did all the typing. I just copy and paste stuff. Right? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some child transitions. And the cool thing about those is those come built in with WinUI, and they are really easy to implement because it's literally one line of code. So why wouldn't you? Nice. Right, and some of these theme transitions are part of all of the controls that we have across WinUI. So if you, let's say, have a list view and you remove an item, you can see that all of the content automatically flows, and it has that nice built-in animation. But you can add those transitions to your own bespoke UIs as well.
I assume you can also like use different easing functions or different.
Right, you can extend them, and there are a couple built in. So if we're gonna open this up now, so this on the left here is the old, right? So it basically jumps, and then here on the right, you can now see that it like smoothly animates in and out. And again, it's a very subtle thing, but it does add up to your overall app experience. And again, it's just one line of code anyway, so
that's nice.
It's an easy win. Now, the other thing that I saw when I go back to our device page here is that dialog. It basically appeared, right, when you when it shows, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
Maybe we can add some of the implicit animations that we have as part of the toolkit, right?
Yes.
I think you built some of those, or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we also use them all over the place in the store. We really are big fans of implicit animations. Yeah.
Can you tell us how some of these work?
Yeah. The cool thing about composition animation, especially the implicit ones, is that you don't have to manually trigger them. Like you don't need to start and stop them. You can just assign triggers to some specific events, such as an item being visible or not. And then the compositor, which is like the underlying rendering engine of the XAML framework, will take care of automatically starting and stopping them whenever needed. They will run on a dedicated compositor thread, which means that they will always be super smooth, matching whatever display refresh rate your screen has. And for instance, in this case, we're using implicit show animations, which means that you can just make your item visible or collapsed, and then the framework will take care of like showing the animation, and then once that's done, it will actually remove the element from the visual tree and vice versa. So it makes doing things like this super convenient.
Right. So now we see here that it like smoothly animates in and out.
Nice.
The cool thing about some of these are really extensible. So I'm using an opacity animation for the actual transition, and then a translation for moving it up and down. Now you see some of the values here that I'm using here in terms of duration. They might look pretty weird, but we have great guidance in our documentation, and we'll be adding that soon to the WinUI gallery as well. That would basically stick to these default values. The reason why we do that is that we're using these values all across Windows, so then your app really gets that native look and feel in terms of animations, because it's actually pretty difficult to to come up with some of these timings. It's really because things might come off as slow or too fast,
right.
And we have some great guidance on that we can
That's good.
that we can look at. Now, the other thing, since you are working on the store, can you tell a bit about how you guys are doing some of these animations?
Yeah, so I wanted to just do a quick demo of the store just to show how we're actually leveraging many of these, not only animations, but also some of the power that using a native UI framework offers, in particular, the ability to have all kinds of custom effects. So just going over some of them, here in the spotlight, you can see we have this custom control, this scroller that is fully composition-based, so it also supports things such as interaction tracker. I can actually use the mouse. You can see it as inertia and follows my finger. It's super smooth. We have this light effect that follows the mouse cursor. We have this ripple effect when you click. And here on the See Details button, you can even see we have some soft shadow effect that mirrors the light in the opposite direction. Here we have some of these cards in these collections where we have some, we call these pop-up cards, where you can hover over them and they will just show up using some connected animations. And the entire content of these cards is actually fully rendered natively using Win2D with custom pixel shaders. So for instance, here we are loading the images, then we are creating a custom effect graph where we mirror them at the bottom. We have some custom shaders to have this gradient of blur. We have some procedural noise on it to remove color banding artifacts. And you can do all kinds of things like that. We do that all over the place. So here, for instance, we have these other cards which are also fully rendered with custom shaders. Or if you go to the AI Hub, we have this dedicated page when you're running on a Copilot Plus PC, like is the case here. And here, for instance, the entire background is actually a swap chain that is rendering this pixel shader that achieves this real-time colored animation in the background. And that's also using custom shaders. It's running at 60 frames per second. We have this custom control with this effect here. This is also another custom pixel shader that's rendering on the GPU. And we have some animation, like I can click on this, and you can see the entire content adjusting. And this is just an example of some of the effects that you can get when you really leverage the power of a native platform, and you leverage this kind of interop that native framework offer.
Right, right. And I think we, like some of the more recent animation helpers that you guys created, we actually are putting those in the community toolkit too, right?
Oh, yeah, for instance, so let's open a product page. I'm going to click on this one. If we scroll down, you can see that the header kind of morphs into this sticky bar that you can also click on to scroll back up. And you see this animation where like the button kind of just shifts there. This is using a connected animation, right, which is exclusive to EWP and WinUI 3. And this entire system to actually easily declare these kind of items that then move. Yeah, we open sourced it. It's part of the toolkit. It's in labs, I think. And we actually have samples for it in the Windows Community Toolkit gallery. It's this transition helper API. And you can see here, for instance, we have this card that you can then morph into various visual states, and it's using the same technology that we also use in the store.
Nice. Yeah, so this is really helpful when you really want to go. I mean, the animations that I showed were just very simple ones.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of things.
Right, but with these kind of types of connected animations, we can go to the next level and create some really cool experiences. Now, I see in the store here, I see a bunch of things, like apps. And you know, what is the first thing that a user would probably see when they see your app?
Probably the icon.
Right, it's the actual app icon, right? And that is something that we got feedback on from you all as well, that we have a lot of documentation in terms of how to construct your app icon, but we don't have any like great templates for you to actually do that for you. So that's why we've been working together with the design team to come up with a new Figma app icon kit, and where we're also combining some of the screenshots that you see in the store. So what you see here on the left is basically some guidance on how to create some of these app icons, what are best practices in terms of sizing, in terms of colors, in terms of shadows and whatnot. And it actually has some cool interactive things that we can try out. So I already added my icon here. And what you can see is that it basically creates a preview of how this icon will render in the store. So I can actually see how my app is gonna turn out.
Make sure all the paddings are right.
Right. And what we haven't added here, but we will very soon, is we will add some of the shell surfaces across Windows 2. So you can actually play around, how does my app icon render across the title, the taskbar? How does it show up in SysTray or in some of the jump list or start menu that we have across Windows?
That's awesome.
Right. But we're also going to help you creating beautiful screenshots, because I think we know from the store team that we see that more people tend to download apps if the screenshots look very polished as well, right? I'm not sure if I have an example here. Maybe Copilot? I have no idea. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. This is a nice example.
It's very polished.
So you see, this looks very polished, right? There was a lot of effort put into this to make sure that the screenshot is not just a blank screenshot, but actually, you know, has some styling around it. We're going to make that easier for you as well by in that same Figma template. So I added my template here, or a screenshot of my app, and you can see that we actually generate a couple of cool compositions on how your template would look like. And even we're going to do some of these things that we are, we can highlight certain parts of your screenshot.
I assume you can also move that around if you want.
Exactly, right. And then just with a single shortcut, you will be able to export all of these images and then just upload those to Partner Center. So if you're going to publish your app, you can make your app look pretty great.
Nice.
Right. So this is coming soon. We're going to work with the design team to wrap that up and get that published up in the docs. So to recap, Fluent Design can really help you, even if you're not a designer, can really help you to make your app look great on Windows. And if you just stick to some of the core design principles that we have, that will already get you pretty far along. Some of the design helpers that we have in the WinUI gallery and in the toolkit are very simple to use, so definitely check those out and apply those to your app. And then lastly, the app icon and screenshot templates for Figma are coming pretty soon. So that will make it easy for your app to look great on the store. Talking about the store, I think we have some announcements there as well.
Yes, talking about the store. So we announced some news about the store at Build. First thing is we reached 1.2 billion users, and the store is, once again, a very open platform. We accept any kinds of apps, Win32, 𝗬𝗲𝗶, web apps. They can be packaged using MSAX, they can be unpackaged. It doesn't matter what technology you're using, all apps are welcome. So it's truly an open platform. New at Build, we also just announced that we have a new zero-cost onboarding for individual developers, so you don't even need to pay a fee, and we're the first store to actually do that. And we also announced a new fast track for companies to get your app in the store very, very fast, where we will help you every step of the way. If you want to learn more about this, you're welcome to check out the Boost Your App Success with the latest Microsoft Store features. It's a session at Build. You can watch it on demand. And yeah, if you're publishing on Windows, we really recommend leveraging the store, especially if you also use MSAX. You get things such as the store using its own CDN to allow you to distribute your app worldwide. You get things such as clean install and uninstall, auto updates via the store. And even if you're just an unpackaged app, you still get the nice discoverability from the store. And we even have new collections such as the AI Hub to showcase all kinds of apps that leverage AI. And we're constantly making improvements to the store to make it easier for people to discover and acquire your app.
Nice.
Yeah, here's some links if you want to learn more about the various topics that we covered. First one is aka.ms/WinDev, where we have a whole bunch of docs on how to get started building apps for Windows. Next, there's aka.ms/MVVM Toolkit, which will point you to the sample app for the MVVM Toolkit. From there, there's also links to easily access either the docs or the actual MVVM Toolkit repo on GitHub. And then lastly, there's aka.ms/WinUI Gallery, which I think you also helped put together, right? That has all the samples with all the styles and template that you also displayed, which we recommend using to really make your app shine on Windows.
And a big shout out to the community too. Since it's open source, we had massive amount of contributions over the last couple of months, adding some really cool features to WinUI Gallery. So thank you all for that too. And I think with that, we can wrap up. So I think this will also be the overflow room for the Scott and Mark session. So if you want to stay around, then you're more than welcome to.
And if you have questions, there's a mic at the center of the room. You're welcome to walk up there and ask your questions.
Yep.
And yeah, we'll have 10 more minutes for Q&A. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. No questions.
Or not.
That's good.
We just covered everything. There's no questions possibly left to ask. Sure.
I've been away from XAML for a while, but we were using something called 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗻𝗀 to kind of hook everything together. Does some of this you guys doing replace that in some?
Sorry, can you repeat that on the mic?
We were using something called 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗻𝗀 to provide our MVVM kind of. Is this replace some of that?
Yeah, so it doesn't replace in the sense that 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀 is just another third-party library that offers some MVVM functionality. The MVVM Toolkit is our first-party, official MVVM library, but you're welcome to use whichever one works for you. So of course, if you're building a new app, and if the MVVM Toolkit and its source generators work great for you, you're welcome to use it. If you have an existing app and you're using 𝗬𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀, you don't necessarily have to migrate. So you're welcome to just pick whichever one works best for you.
Right. And the .NET Community Toolkit is supported in a wide range of frameworks, right? It's not
the .NET Community Toolkit multi-targets down to .NET Standard 2.0, so you can use it even on .NET Framework, all the way down to .NET 8. Well, of course, you can also use it on .NET 9 or .NET 10. Whenever there's new APIs that we can take advantage of, we will add a new target for it. But we also really want to support as many frameworks and platforms as possible. This is also why we specifically didn't want to tie it to any specific UI framework. So you can use it from WinUI 3, WPF, UWP, WinForms if you want to. I think they added support for some MVM primitives.
MAUI, right?
Yeah, MAUI or Uno platform. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, if there's no other questions, I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you all.